Alright, we're back here again. So let's do an update. So the last time you saw it was on the rotisserie. You saw me talking about the total control products, front suspension, and all of that, and getting it bolted up, etc., etc. I got it all on. As you can see, it's finally off the rotisserie. It is sitting on the ground now. Amaze balls, right? Awesome. So let's start by talking about where we left off, which is the Total Control Products front suspension. Now you can actually see that I got the anti-squat tie rods put in. I believe it's what they call them. So got those put in. That's all brand new. You know, kind of started with the factory measurements and factory defaults, etc. As far as the spacers down there on the spindles, those are, by the way, factory 1971 spindles that I'm using. They work just fine. As far as the spacers for, you know, how far up and down I put the tie rod on, I kind of looked at what the default was in the instructions and just kind of made an assessment. I honestly have no idea if it's going to work or not. We really won't know that until we actually put this thing on the alignment machine and you know, bounce on it, trounce on it, all that kind of stuff. So, but the important thing was that I wanted to get it all together so I could set it on the ground. I got that. By the way, if you take a look at that. Yeah, looks real good. Looks pretty straight. I know that I've got to do a little bit of adjustment, but I can tell you right now when I'm pushing this thing in and out at this point, it's pretty straight. So I think I did a pretty good job. Alright, so got the rack and pinion pretty much in. Got the brakes and everything all on. Kind of got I got all my brake lines hooked up, and I did a basic bleed. I've got a few more probably bleeding pumps or whatever you want to call, you know, just I got some more bleeding to do. It's not quite perfect yet, but it's getting close. But I just wanted it on the ground, and I'm not going to drive it. Obviously, this isn't going to run and go anywhere, so I just decided what I was going to do was just get the thing, you know, to where there's brake fluid in it, because I wanted to see if any of this was going to leak. That was the main reason why I basically put everything together and put some fluid in it, because I wanted to see if it would leak. And yes, it did leak. There was a leak out behind by the axle at the new brake line, where the two rear brake lines split out from the main line going back. You can see the main line right there. And it did leak there, and I think we had a little bit of a leak right there at this union as well. That one right there. So got them all tight now, so everything doesn't leak anymore, but again, I still need to do some bleeding. Okay, so rack and pinion in, tie rods on, brakes filled up, brakes pretty much bled for the most part. Still need to do a little bit more. So then the next thing I wanted to do was, because my transmission used to sit right here and it was taking up a lot of room, and then my gear vendor unit was in behind the welder over there and it was taking up a lot of room. So I said, all right, it's time to get rid of that stuff. Time to actually put it on the car, because then it stays with the car, it's mounted in the car, and it's no longer in my way here in the garage. So that's what I did. Plus, I wanted to put a little bit of weight on this, because I wanted to, you know, start doing some minor suspension and alignment adjustments. Okay, so that's what I did. I actually went and got this is a 5.0 roller block. No biggie there. I don't really care. I just got a block, a 302 block that I had, and I put the crank into it. And what I ended up doing was I had this on the floor. Well, not really on the floor. I had it on, actually, this thing right here. I put it right up on top of that. It kind of actually held it, believe it or not. And then I got a cherry picker, and I took this and I plugged it right into the transmission. I actually have, as you can see, the actual starter alignment plate, or that, you know, separating plate in there and everything. I actually bolted on the gear vendor. Well, no, I bolted on the gear vendor adapter, but I did not bolt on the gear vendor itself, not at first. Okay, So why did I do all of that? Well, because first of all, again, I want to put some weight on it, but I also want to get it installed. And the problem that you have here is this transmission bell housing is about 19 inches tall. And if you want to, raise this thing way the heck up there, just so that you can slide it underneath, this right here to get it underneath there, and this is the low car to begin with, well, you can see my dilemma. Back in high school, I used to have access to a forklift where I could actually put it, I used to take the forklift and put it right underneath this big old cross member right there, and I used to raise it way the heck up in the air if I wanted to. It probably wasn't smart, probably dangerous, probably a lot of stupid things, actually. But guess what? I did it, I lived, and we won't do it again, probably. But anyway, I wanted to get the transmission put in there, and I couldn't really get this with the current tool and lift situation that I have right now. I couldn't get this thing high enough, so what I elected to do was tie the engine block to it, and because I had all my radiator and everything out, I decided to go ahead and hook, that's why these bolts are right here, actually, they're head bolts, and I put them right there, and this thing was still heavy for the transmission, but it was perfect because it just dove right in there. And then I had a buddy of mine get underneath there and actually kind of bench press it upwards as we snaggled that thing in there. We had to go up and over the parking brake cable that goes across over there. So what I had was basically a jack down there, a floor jack with a piece of wood on top of it. And he got it down there, and he was able to just lift it up and over that parking brake cable and set the tail end of that gear vendor adapter right on top of that piece of wood and that floor jack. And then from that point, we were able to roll it backwards, take the cherry picker, and drop it right down onto these motor mounts that I have custom fabricated and made, and it worked out perfectly. So basically, this is in here now with some weight. Then I went ahead and actually bolted the gear vendor unit on the back of the adapter. So you go back there now, you will actually, underneath there, and I'm not going to crawl under there now, but if you go underneath there, you'll actually see the transmission, the gear vendor adapter, and the gear vendor unit itself. Okay? So, once I had at least that much weight, I kind of wanted to do a basic rear axle adjustment, because you're gonna have to adjust your drive angle. Okay, you got to have your transmission drive shaft angle where it starts pretty much in parallel with the drive shaft angle of the axle, okay, as it's pointing towards the front, okay, to make sure you don't get that cardin effect that happens when drive shafts turn, okay, and they're not phased properly. So I did a basic adjustment, and basically what I did is I was underneath the car, and you can't really see it, I guess. I don't know why I'm walking back here, but there is the upper links, and I was actually able to turn both of those in little at a time. Unfortunately, to do that, you have to actually take them up and out of either the cradle that's up on the car or on top of the axle where they bolt in. You have to actually unbolt and remove them. And so, yeah, it's a little finagling, basically. You got to take and, raise the car up, put the weight of the car onto the frame somewhere, so that way the axle is hanging and you'll be able to get those bolts loose. Because if you try to do it with the weight resting on the axle and you take those bolts loose, then the axle wants to, kind of rock forward, and it's just a big old mess. So that's what I did. It took me about 3 times to try it, and what I will say is the upper links, I have nearly no adjustment left. In other words, I really sucked them close in to basically, it was pointing upwards quite a bit, and I was able to bring it down, which is what I want to do, okay? Or need to do, rather, I should say. Now, with that being said, I need to talk to you about something else. So I did that cross member down there for my transmission. That was my old C4 cross member for my C4 transmission. Now, I could have went out and bought a C6. transmission crossmember, etc. I guess. I mean, I was looking around. I got a little confused because there is some confusion between the FMX and the C6, and you know, there wasn't any solid information as to if I actually was buying a C6, crossmember for the transmission. And at the time, I was over at this car, and I were over at my friend's garage, which has a lot of room, and I had my welder over there, and I just said, screw this. I took my old C41 and I modified it to fit, and it works. However, here's what I found. Because of the drive shaft angle really pointing upwards, and I needed to level it out, one of the things that I kind of did is I think I made that cross member a little to the point of when you bolt it up to the C6, the transmission, instead of kind of, you know, the engine, for example, when you put an intake manifold on here and it's a carburetor pad, you're going to actually notice that it's tilted, you know, leaning downward in the front, so to speak. I mean, it's supposed to be level, but my point is that that the engine and transmission are actually supposed to dip a little bit, so to speak. So that's how it was in the factory. Let's just put it that way. It's actually pointing down. If you've ever seen a engineering car silhouette, you will actually see the engine and the transmission pointing downward more than actually sitting level. Okay? And I think what I ended up doing by the way I built that bracket is that it actually kind of, yes, did what I did not want it to do, which is made it more flat. Okay? So, with that being said, I'm going to this weekend, tomorrow, as a matter of fact, take and unbolt that cross member, and I'm going to remodify it again. One of the cool things about having your own welder and fabrication skills, I guess. But I'm going to remodify that again to drop it down just slightly. And here's, not only did I notice because the transmission was sitting a little flat, whereas the rear axle was sitting really up, pointing upwards. But the other thing I noticed was that when I actually started looking at it as it was just sitting here in the car, as far as before the engine and transmission was placed, and then when I got the transmission bolted up here, and then I went to actually put that cross member in, one of the things I noticed was that, I mean, it actually sits a little crooked. In other words, it's not nice and level like so. It's actually tilted up on one side, and I do believe it's the passenger side. So I'm going to actually take it out tomorrow, and I'm going to actually build a little bit of a drop bracket, you might say, to drop the passenger side down. See, now it's not, the engine and transmission is not crooked because it's actually level on the motor mounts, which those are very positive, as you can see. They have the through bolt design, okay? But when you get underneath it and you actually look at that transmission mount, you can actually see, let's see, yeah, on the driver's side, you can actually see more metal of that polyurethane bushing pulling out, and over here it's all squished and flat because, like I said, it's not quite level. So I think I'm going to kill two birds with one stone. I'm going to level it out, which will look nicer, and number two, it will actually drop that transmission down just slightly, which, you know, I don't want it way down, obviously, but I do want to bring it down because, remember, on my axle, it was pointing way up, and I actually brought it down. Well, my upper links are dang near, pulled all the way in to where they cannot adjust to make it flatten out anymore. So rather than just leaving it as is and hoping for the best, because I haven't put a drive shaft in to see if I even have a problem. But if I have a problem and I need to actually flatten that drive shaft some more, I'm not going to have a whole lot of measurement. So rather than wait for that to happen, I'm just going to take that cross member out, put a little drop in it, it'll level that out, and it'll actually pitch my transmission downward, which will allow me to actually kick that axle upwards if maybe, I mean, I don't know, maybe it needs to stay where it's at. But my point is that I think I'm going to kill two birds with one stone by doing that. So that's what I plan to do tomorrow. And one last thing before I go, because somebody was requesting it, was my 2005 Mustang seats. Here they are. They are bolted in. Basically, I use the old mounting bracket areas there. I just made little brackets and welded a bolt. As you can see right there, I welded a bolt going out the front So it makes it like a stud system. And then in the back here, you can kind of see right there, I used a block of wood and I kind of sanded it to fit the contour. And those bolts are the same thing. They kind of stick up through the bottom of the floor. There's a big old flat washer down there. You know, I'm probably going to take, I mean, right now they're just in there just to be in there. But later I'm probably actually going to put a big old piece of flat metal underneath, or a huge washer, to it grabs more surface area. And I'll probably, very likely, epoxy those things in a little bit. Just so that they don't drop out if I ever unbolt it. But the whole plan, or the whole idea is you just take and you bring those seats in. So you kind of take the seats in the front here and you slip over the studs, and then you rock back the seat and it drops on the studs in the back, and then you just put your nuts on there and tighten it down. And again, I have a power seat here. You can see that I'm going to need to recover it, but hey, it's all right because I got these things for free. But that will now be a power seat. I can tell you for a fact that it will go back further, and it will come forward further, and it will go up higher than the factory seats, obviously. They do sit a little high, but I like it. I like it a lot because I used to throw a pillow underneath my butt on these things, on this car. So you can kind of see how tall right there where the seat, you know, headrests are. As a matter of fact, if those headrests become a problem, which I think they might, what I'm probably going to do when I have them recovered is I'm probably going to cut those down in half. I'm going to take those headrests and actually cut them in half, because I think they could potentially be a little bit of a problem once I get the headliner in there. Especially this side over here, if the person is not paying attention and they start raising the seat way up, like my daughter or my wife, who might be really short, and well, they are really short, and they might want to drive. So I don't want them actually hitting and dragging on my headliner without, you know, paying attention to that. So again, I really think I'm just gonna, when I get this thing apart for recovering, just cut them right in half or something like that. Plus it'll make it look custom. It'd be kind of cool, I think. So that's my plan with that. And otherwise, those seats, they fit perfect as far as I'm concerned. And I love them. So I can't wait to get them all recovered and get all this done. Tomorrow, we're going to be working on putting the transmission mount, like I just said. Then we're going to be working on putting the shifter in. Then we're going to be working on putting the old Air Products air conditioner on the back side of this firewall here and get it ready. And then I can start doing a lot more work in regards to my wiring harness and everything in the dash area. Still waiting for my buddy to let me know when we can take this over to cut out the quarters and the taillight panel, so we can get that done. But I mean, in the meantime, I'm going to try to do as much as I can, and then whenever he's ready for it, obviously it's on its wheels, it's ready to roll. We'll just slide it up on a trailer, take it on over there, and get to work on it. So sorry to make these videos so long, but hey, you know, that's the way they are, and I just want to explain to you everything that I'm doing and how it's going for me, so that way if you ever think about, you know, what you want to do with your car, you kind of know what you're going to be running into. And believe me, buddy, it's or gal, whatever, this is a lot of work. A lot of work. Think twice about maybe even 3 times actually about restoring your car. If you're the type that doesn't, you know, persevere, and if you want to give up easy, and you look at, you know, monumental task and think, oh my God, I'll never do it, and blah blah blah. And don't get me wrong, I'm not perfect. I've had some thoughts myself about, geez, I don't even know why I did this, so on and so forth. But in the end, though, I'm that type of guy who is going to persevere and going to push through and going to get it done. So again, like and subscribe, come back some more. We'll have some more updates and let you know how it's going. Check you later.